and welcome to today's episode of the Made for More podcast. I am super excited to have a wonderful guest joining me in the studio today. Hello, Alison. How are you? And welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Ali. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to speaking to you and your listeners.
Me too. It is absolutely my pleasure. So before we get too far into it, Alison, tell me a little bit around how did you get here and where are you going? Tell us a little bit about your business now, but how you ended up getting to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I guess it all started with my lifelong ambition from the time I was about 8 years old, I think, was to be a primary school teacher. I remember as a little kid, I'd have all the kids in the street in my bedroom, and I'd have my chalkboard and they'd have their seats, and I'd give them worksheets, and I'd even prepare reports for their parents. So I think I was born to be a teacher. But after completing, I did go on to do a teaching degree, and I did teach for a few years, and then I guess a bit of a sliding doors moment happened, and needed a bit of a change. And so I decided I was going to organise a trip to Bali. So I went into a Flight Centre store on a Monday, got some brochures, and thought, this might be a good job for me. This might be like something just to do for 6 months or so, maybe get a couple of free holidays, and then go back to the real job of teaching. So as I was grabbing my Bali brochures, I asked the girl what I needed to do to get a job with Flight Centre, and she said, well, you need to speak to Jeff Harris. He owns the company. So I went home that Monday afternoon and I gave Jeff a call. I had an interview with Jeff on the Thursday, and I started with Flight Centre on the Monday. So that all happened within a week.
Wow.
And what I thought would be a fun job for 6 months or so turned into an amazing career of 25 years. So, so the journey through Flight Centre was starting as a novice travel consultant, and then running a few of their stores, opening a store in a regional town in Victoria. And then I became an area leader, and then went on to be state manager, running over 200 stores with a turnover of about $1.2 billion.
Wow.
And then after 25 years at Flight Centre, I decided to set up my own leadership consulting practice in 2016. And that's what I'm doing now. And although COVID was obviously a bump in the road for everybody, I still love what I do. I'm very passionate about the work I do, in particular in retail. So that's my sweet spot, if you like.
Yeah. So take me back, back to 25 years ago when you walked into Flight Centre. You'd been studying to become a teacher. And I think at some stage we all kind of go through that phase. I remember doing, work placement or something like that in year 10, and wanting to be a teacher, and walked into a classroom of receptions, and there was just so much booger, and I was like, oh, actually no, that's not for me. Ironically, I now have 4 children and am constantly having to wipe booger, but I think it is one of those phases that we go through. And so tell me a little bit around what drew you to Flight Centre. Was it you thought that you were going to get free flights, or did you like the customer service base, because it's quite different to teaching?
Well, look, I don't know if it was one particular thing. I mean, what attracted me was I have a real passion for travel.
Yeah.
So that was probably the initial attraction, but I think it was the culture, but also the business model.
Mm-hmm.
And bearing in mind, I was 23 years old back then and knew nothing about business. But it was, I guess, one of the frustrations with teaching is that it doesn't matter how good you are as a teacher and how committed you are as a teacher, you're actually paid on longevity. So a first-year teacher earns X amount, and a 10-year teacher earns a higher amount, regardless of any sort of result or motivation for the job of teaching. The thing about Flight Centre, I think the initial attraction was that you're paid on your results. And so there was a real mentality around ownership. It was like almost you owned your own little business within a business.
Mm-hmm,
so the harder you work, the more you earn. the better service you gave a customer, they would come back and book their next holiday with you. So there was this real sense of business ownership at a consultant level.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I was very, very lucky that Jeff Harris, who was the founding owner, really took me under his wing and really developed, or really recognised initially my capacity to be a leader, which I'd never considered myself as a leader before, but really identified something in me and really developed me and gave me opportunities. So within 2 years, within 12 months, I was an assistant manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 2 years, I became a store manager.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So tell me a little bit around, because when you start a career at 23 and then you go on to lead people, tell me a little bit around, and I mean, at the moment you run a leadership consulting practice all around working with leaders in the retail sector. But, 25 years ago, we couldn't just jump online. Perhaps we could, it wasn't as convenient to jump online and book travel. So I imagine that the flight centre and the way that people book travel was quite different to what it is today. Well, 12 months ago. But tell me a little bit around your journey into leadership and what led you to, recognise that this is what you wanted to do as your business 25 years later.
Well, I think the first thing is, I think as I said, from a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And I think initially we think teaching is in a classroom in the education system.
Yeah.
And I think as I reflect back, you can be a teacher in so many different fields. I'm a teacher now. And I think when I look at what drove my results at Flight Centre, it was because of my ability to teach.
Yeah.
So whether you're a football coach or, teaching appears in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Not just the traditional classroom and education system.
Yeah.
So I think that was the first thing, and that I really, the culture at Flight Centre was very much around family and team-based, tribal leadership, if you like.
Yeah, cool.
And I also saw the value and the importance of reward and recognition. I've spoken about reward in terms of you're paid on your results, good and bad. But the other thing that was huge in Flight Centre was recognition on those results. So, every month, the whole of Victoria, which back then was not a lot of people, I must say, but it was, once a month we would all get together, have dinner, and the top, results were read out, top store results were read out, individual results. So I really started to see the very things that drove results. And sometimes we think it's money that drives results, but it's actually not. It's really the sense of significance, the sense of feeling valued, feeling appreciated, and having a voice. And that's what Flight Centre did brilliantly. Monthly one-on-ones with your leader, which is still prevalent today.
Yeah.
So it was just a culture very much around people, and that people were the heart of the business.
Yeah.
I think that's what I saw firsthand.
Yeah. And it sounds like they unpacked that tricky little piece, that variable, called people early on and began to realize that, we can throw money at it. We can absolutely reward staff, but what we need to be doing is that recognition piece. And I think when leaders start recognizing the recognition, what tends to happen is that you build this culture of high performance. So rather than it being competitive and everyone trying to get the reward, it becomes much more celebratory, even if there is, that recognition at the individual level, but then we extend it out to start recognizing, teams and regions. So when you went from, starting working there within a week and then becoming the assistant manager, when did you start getting a feel for, leadership and knew that is where you wanted to continue to expand your career? Tell me a little bit around the journey.
Yeah, well, it was actually the 2-year mark where my store manager, her husband, was relocating to Sydney, so she relocated with Flight Centre, which created the opportunity for me, I guess, to step up into a team leader role. And fortunately, I took on the role. I learned everything, did everything that I now know not what to do in terms of trying to wear too many hats.
Yes.
I soon realised that wasn't a way to lead effectively.
Yeah.
And so what I learnt, I think one of my first lessons was, I believe the level of ownership that your people have is in direct proportion to the level of communication that you have around the business.
Ooh, yes. Boom.
So one of the very first things I did, I don't know where I got this idea from, but I got an idea of around that model around, I created what I called a business folder for everybody in the team. And every Tuesday we'd have a team meeting, and we would go through various parts of the business. So at the end of the month, when results came through in terms of what our sales results were, what our costs were, and therefore what our profit was, that profit and loss statement was handed out to the team, and they knew everything that there was to know about the business. They knew what it cost to run that store. They knew what our income was. They knew what profit we made. And then within that, I delegated various areas of the business to each person in the business, which we call directorships. So there was a director of marketing. So their job was to make sure that all of our marketing systems were in place. There was a director of product, making sure that all our product, our brochures and everything were up to date. A director of travel insurance to make sure that we had all the information we needed around travel insurance, as an example. And so everybody had a directorship. So they came to each meeting and did a little mini report on their area. So I think what I soon learned is that, the level, if you want your people to be engaged, they will only be engaged at the level you give them the information.
Oof,
Once
yes.
they had everything, they all had a team of 8 consultants. They all cared about the business, cared about the results, cared about the clients as much as I did.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I really instilled. Then when I became an area leader and then state manager, that was a number one philosophy for me, that if your people are disengaged, you have to reflect, are you sharing the information that they need to be engaged?
Oh, the classic whiff them. Yes.
If they are coming in, doing their job and going home and that's all, well, maybe there's an opportunity for you to be giving them more information so they feel that they have more ownership over it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's real value in reflecting on that for all leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few, I think, absolute gold nuggets in that. So the first one was around, the transparency, as in and everyone in your team, knew what the profitability was of your store and where they were kind of sitting. So therefore had an invested interest. And then the second part, and I think, this is a really great tool or philosophy for all leaders to adapt, whether it's in retail or whether it's in their own leadership position, is around that responsibility. And I think, particularly when we're new in the leadership space or are recently promoted in the leadership space, it can be really easy to want to hold all the things close to our chest. Heaven forbid we get found out that we're not quite good enough to be there. But it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, being able to delegate the responsibility to each of your staff members, it lifted the entire team up. It wasn't just you sort of running the show. It was everyone pitching in and taking responsibility for themselves as well.
Absolutely, Ali. And that's the key thing. It's the responsibility. It's not just the task.
Mm.
So, for instance, the director of travel insurance, their job was to grow our insurance sales, as an example.
Yeah.
So they were given total responsibility for being able to do that. So it's not just about giving them a list of jobs to do, but it's having purpose in that role, and letting them, really own that part of the business.
Yeah. So tell me, and this is just for our listeners as well, from a tactical or tangible perspective, when it came to appointing people directors of various areas, did you kind of look at their strengths, or was it areas of interest? Was it a volunteer thing, or was it you are now designated to this particular portfolio, for example?
Initially, it was very much, well, I think they're one in the same sometimes. It's a chicken or an egg thing, Are you good at something because you like it, or is it the reverse? You like it, so, so you become good at it. I don't
Yeah.
chicken or an egg thing, but I just when I set out the directorships, the way we did that, it was myself and my assistant manager at the time. What we did, we literally wrote down everything that needed to be done to make that business operate. Everything from emptying the bins, like
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And what we did, we set out the directorships, and then we allocated those each task and everything that needed to be done under each of those directorships, and typed up the directorships of each director of this and director of that. And then we went through it with the team, and then we asked the team what would be the directorship they would really like to take on.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and then we rotated it every 3 months. But if someone was really passionate about their directorship and they were doing an amazing job, and everyone was happy for them to stay in that directorship, that's what we did as well.
Yeah.
So,
Wonderful.
the thing I learned unintentionally, I guess, is that so many people, certainly when I became an area leader and then state manager, so many people under my leadership went on to become great leaders within themselves and take on bigger roles. So I think that's a fantastic development tool.
Yeah.
Leadership, the directorship model.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, well, you just mentioned about being the state manager. So tell me a little bit around the shifts that you had to make as a leader as well, from, working with a team that you're seeing every day, 9 to 5, or, whatever their working hours happen to be, to then becoming, a regional manager and state manager where you're managing multi-sites. Some of them I imagine were far away, regional or rural sites. How did you go managing teams that, you didn't kind of have your finger on the pulse all the time?
Yeah, it's really, it's a really important, I guess, skill I think that I had to learn. It's not easy, but it's a different leadership style when you are with your team every day versus leading a number of teams remotely, and you're not leading that team every single day. So the transition from store manager to area leader happened after about four and a bit years as a store manager, and then leading 13 stores. And I think that was a huge lesson for me, because what I tried to do was lead 13 stores.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that you actually can't lead 13 stores. And certainly in the work I do now in retail, and certainly in the book that I've just written, there's a huge section in the book around this very topic. A store manager can lead through controlling the environment, whereas a regional manager or an area leader has to lead through influence. So it's a very different style, and it's the very thing that I think can trip people up and can be the biggest inhibitor to results when you try and lead through control. I refer to it as spinning plates, trying to, the clown at the circus. Spins the plates. And when you're an area leader with a control leadership style, then you are there trying to spin the 13 plates, and what you'll soon see is eventually the plates come crashing down. So it's about being able to lead through influence. And so then what sits under that is being able to be really clear, having very clear expectations of all of your leaders and store managers, but then being able to provide the level of support that is needed to meet those expectations. So high expectations matched with high support. And that's around how you plan and prepare for store visits and one-on-ones, how you follow up, how you communicate, and how you inspire and give recognition, and make them feel good about the work that they do. Then the other side of that, of course, is being able to have honest conversations, which I know you're passionate about. Have honest conversations when they're needed, because you want your people to do their best work, and they can only do that when they're given honest feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing what you said there. You can lead by control, because you can kind of, tweak and adjust accordingly when you're there, like you're right there in the business. But when you've got multi-sites, you do need to be able to empower your staff, influence them in some way, but also offer that support. So tell me a little bit around, this multi-site obviously that when you were looking at 13 different teams, it's kind of 13 different little ecosystems. But now what we're seeing, and we're going to continue to see, is teams that are operating, whether it's remotely or geographically dispersed. How do you think this kind of leadership model or leadership style will need to be adapted, even for teams that are within the team, air quotes, within the same team, but are actually geographically located in different areas, or perhaps, remote, or some in office? How do you think people or leaders can adapt that same style?
Yeah, look, I think I still feel this is a fundamental part of leadership, but I think it is more prevalent now in what you're saying, when there is a lot more remote working going on, is that you need to have a very strong vision and goal and purpose as to why you are doing what you do, and having everybody aligned to the one vision and the one goal.
Yeah.
And quite often when people are not doing what's required is because they don't have purpose. They don't understand why they're doing what they do and how their role fits into the larger piece of the business. So certainly with when I went from, so my first life as an area leader was 4 years, and then I went off and had my 2 boys. And then I came back to the area leader role 3 years later, and happened to take on the most underperforming region within Victoria, which was 18 stores, and only one of the 18 were making money. The rest were losing money.
Oh, shitters.
And so I thought, where do I start? Where do I start? And it is exactly what you've said. It was around, okay, we need a vision. We need a goal that everybody is aligned to. And the goal, what I'd also learned is that, people are humans first and employees second.
Yes.
So we need to understand why people do what they do. What's their motivation? What's their passion for working in travel?
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I started. And we had a very strong vision, which wasn't really around the business. The vision was actually called "It Takes a Village to Raise a Child."
Oh, love it.
And coined by Hillary Clinton way back when. And I just resonated with that. And it's about, it takes a village to raise a child, and I guess that was about teams working together for a common goal.
Yeah.
And that common goal was people travel for a whole range of different reasons.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's for good and sometimes it's not so good. And our job was to make that experience the best it could be.
Yeah.
So it was really about teams working together to achieve a common goal. And so for me, what I'm noticing now, and particularly as I think one of the challenges for organisations now with so much remote working, is when new people join the business and they don't have the relationships with the people, and they're not sure quite how they fit into the bigger picture of the organisation. So for me, having a very strong vision and getting everybody bought into that vision and mission and purpose is where I would start.
And tell me if you attempted to do this or not. I see this a lot with leaders, particularly if they're going into, difficult teams, or, air quotes, toxic teams, underperforming teams, is they get so caught up putting out the people fires. Whereas in actual fact, if we can take that step back and work on the business rather than in the business, so on the business, building that vision and mission and purpose, it means that the people fires kind of start to extinguish themselves. How tempted were you to, do the people stuff, or did you know that you needed to, get everyone working together?
Yeah, look, it absolutely started with the people stuff, and really, I think the thing for people, as I say, they're humans first. And that everybody comes to work to do a good job. Nobody comes to work to do a terrible job.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And so where I started, it's what I've actually now in my practice, I call the performance pyramid. And the very bottom layer of the pyramid is what I call the environment. And the environment piece is that softer stuff. It's the stuff you can feel, but you can't touch. And it's really around the relationships. It's around human connection, sense of belonging, feeling valued, feeling appreciated. So that's, to me, for any team that I work with now in my practice, and what served me well through every leadership journey I went on through Flight Centre, it was working on the environment first. And then the next layer of the performance pyramid is strategy. And, every organisation needs a good strategy, people strategy, marketing, product, finance, all of those things. And then the top of the pyramid is results. So many organisations try and focus, or they do focus on their results, but to me, your results are an outcome of your environment and your strategies.
100%. And I think when the results are less than what we anticipate, then we're like, we need a better strategy. We need to we need to strategize. Here's our strategy paper. Whereas in actual fact, it's all of that, air quotes again, the soft skills that we need to be able to create that connection and buy-in with teams. So tell me, you mentioned earlier about your book. Congratulations. Very, very exciting stuff. So tell me a little bit about your book. What's it called? Where can we find it?
Yeah, sure. So I guess one of the positives to come out of lockdown was having the time and space just to focus on writing the book. And it's something I've been wanting to do for a couple of years, but so busy delivering that just didn't have the time and space to get the book done. So the book it's a retail leadership book, and it's called The Essential Guide for Area Leaders in Retail. There's a lot of philosophies in there, a lot of concepts in there that I guess are transportable to any industry, but the book is very targeted on retail, and particularly for multi-site managers. So anyone who is leading multiple teams and needing to lead through influence rather than control, the book's very much designed. It's a very how-to book, which is what I really wanted it to, what I wanted it to be. And the thing about retail is that, 86% of all retail sales are still made in bricks and mortar stores. Online is growing. And of course, through COVID, we didn't have a lot of choice, sometimes, particularly if you're a Victorian. But the area leader role is where they manage, they're leading multiple stores.
Yeah, that's an amazing statistic. 86% is still people walking into a store.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, I'm really surprised by that.
Retailers, their stores are still their biggest sales opportunity. And I think the area leader role is fundamental, critical, crucial to retail success. So certainly from my own experience as an area leader and then leading area leaders, they were really the biggest point of success or failure for results. So the book's very practical, and it's really to help area leaders lead and have more impact. Even if you're not in retail but manage people in multiple locations, then there's lots of strategies in the book as well.
Awesome. I'll put the link to that in the show notes for today's show if anyone would like to pick up a copy. But before we say goodbye, tell me your top 5 tips for leaders.
Sure. So I guess I've tried to make these, I've actually got 10 tips. I'm giving you 5 that I think are transportable to any leader. And I guess the first one is, I think I spoke about this a bit earlier, but it's about having high expectations, but having the high level of support to match those expectations. You can't have high expectations but not match the support. And then on the flip side of that, I sometimes see leaders have enormously high support, but really struggle with the high expectations. So it's really about, asking yourself, is everybody clear on what I expect? And am I providing the level of support for them to be able to meet those expectations?
Love it.
That would be the first principle, I guess, first tip. Second tip, we've sort of spoken about this, which is around environment, strategy and results, the performance pyramid, that so much focus is very much on strategy. And as you highlighted, that when results are not going to plan, the first thing we do is talk about strategy.
Yeah.
Whereas where I see all the pain points are in the environment. I'm yet to hear of anybody that's left an organisation because of the strategy. People have organisation or the product strategy, people leave organisations because of the environment, and so
Yeah.
that should be the first place that you start if you want to improve your results.
Awesome.
My next tip would be around creating community and sense of belonging.
Yeah.
When people feel that they belong, when they feel valued and appreciated, that is what will drive their result or their desire to deliver a result for the organisation. When they feel part of something, it's a human core need, and it's the one that I think is the easiest to fix and certainly the cheapest to fix, but it's the one that sometimes gets missed.
Yeah.
I think for any organisation, developing leadership depth. So your succession plan consistently. And I think that's what is hurting certainly a few of my clients right now, when they haven't been able to, focus on succession planning and leadership development over the last 12 months, because they've been, putting out so
People fires. Yeah.
and so many challenges they've had to deal with, that it's starting to come back to haunt them a little bit. So, developing your future leaders is an ongoing thing. It's not something you start and then finish. It's something that is an ongoing evolution.
Yeah.
And really looking at, for every role in your organisation, is there somebody that's capable of stepping into that role? And if there's not, so it's really mapping it out. If not, you really need to put some focus on that now. So that it doesn't come back to haunt you down the track.
Yeah.
And I guess my last tip is getting advice from people who are getting results. I think whenever we are looking for advice, we can quite often go to people and take on the advice, but the question we need to ask is, what results are you getting?
Yep.
So, it's certainly a strategy that served me well. If I need help or advice in a certain area of my business, I go and find somebody who I consider to be an expert.
Yep.
Or is getting results in that area.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go and get health advice from somebody who, is unhealthy. So in your business, think about where you need advice and make sure they're getting the results that you want to get.
Yeah. And I think I love that saying, it's a Tony Robbins, I think, that success leaves clues. And this is such a good, I guess, little takeaway to take with you. Follow the people that you want to actually follow in their footsteps as well. That is wonderful. So yeah, get advice from the people that are actually getting the results, as opposed to doing a bit of a survey around people that may not actually know at all around your business. Thank you so much for your time today, Alison. If we've got any of our multi-site retail leaders that are listening in, can they book in a time to talk to you? How can they do that?
Yeah, so certainly anybody wanting a copy of the book, they can go to my website, which is alisoncrab.com.au. Nice.
Beautiful.
And if you jump on my website, there's a space there for you to get in touch. And if you want to book in a clarity call with me, for me to understand more about your business and what you want to achieve, more than happy to have a conversation with you and see if we're a good fit to work together.
Sounds amazing. So if there's any of those area leaders out there, or multi-site leaders that are thinking that their plates are near toppling from all of that spinning, I'll put the links in the show notes as well, so you can reach out to Alison. Thank you once again.
Pleasure. Lovely to be with you, Ali.